Hey there! In this two-part video, I want to talk about inner work and how people change, and about some of the obstacles that get in the way of committing to creating focus and allowing ourselves to change old habitual patterns of relationships, those patterns that are not working in our lives. I have been focused on healing work as a priority, as part of my identity, as something that I have immersed myself in for over 10 years, to the point that it has become not only a casual endeavor, but a full-time job. I am aware that not everyone jumps in so completely the way I have valued walking this path of self-reflection and growth and maturing, based upon the places that were hurting within me, based upon the internal obstacles that I've personally experienced around my own sense of self, and based on my day-to-day reality. My work is my passion. I'm committed to this. This is my identity, my life's work. This is important to me, and I really value talking about this because my own life, my own experiences have shown me that healing work is a viable, concrete, identifiable form of focusing one's life, assigning meaning to where we need to grow, and then cultivating that meaning. This is also what has saved me from, at times, very crippling life circumstances. I want to help you in your struggles too. There were several moments in my life when different layers of realization came, where I clearly understood how, despite the obviousness of the failure of my strategies, I couldn't change the patterns and continued to stay in this routine, day after day, month after month, year after year. This is how it all really started for me. What I am proposing is to look at inner work as work, and I want to look at what's getting in the way of making that work happen, because that is, from what I have seen and experienced, the number one motive for keeping sickness and unhappiness in people's lives. Life is about relationships. Everything is interconnected. We are in relationship to ourselves, to the people around us, to our work, to our identity and our little family and the world at large, as well as in a relationship with every little thing that composes our modern life. From our living space to our eating habits, our leisure and our addictions. If we do not value how we create relationships, chances are we are going to mindlessly be going through life recreating relationships that aren't working. We seem to want to change the pattern, but what's getting in the way of changing the pattern, in my current view, is that we are only wanting to experience a different outcome while running away from any type of consistent, mindful, balanced change of what makes us miserable. And when I say running away, I should say making considerable efforts to keep in place patterns that are clearly not productive and are causing us consistent misery. I have been immersed for quite some time in what is called loosely and quite poetically at times enlightenment work, and an old master's saying has come to mind that explains my life quite accurately. Seek enlightenment the same way that a man whose hair is on fire seeks a pond. My own experience could be translated more into: seek your healing work, seek healthy relating, seek saying goodbye to family dysfunction, seek sobriety and ending the relationship to addictions the same way that a person whose hair is on fire seeks a pond. I realize that inner work, the way that I am proposing it, is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the lazy. This is not for the one cruising comfortably through life. This is, at least in my view and in my experience, for those of us who simply do not find any other way out of the path of constant suffering, for those of us who have not been given any other alternative. Life has simply, bluntly, refused to give any opening towards any type of running away from inner work. I want to talk a bit about some of the obstacles and the universal challenges that get in our way of being able to prioritize our healing work so that we are in alignment and integrity with our higher values, and about how we're growing and maturing. I am at a point in my life where it is a certitude for me that if we don't do this inner work, then we won't grow, we won't change, we won't mature, and we won't heal this pain that seems to be our most constant companion. If we won't do this, our relationships will continue to be cycling and recycling in the same toxic, dysfunctional, unsatisfying, frustrating tension, and therefore it feels like if we do nothing, we're just sitting there watching our hair burn. If this sounds intense and extreme, you might not yet be in a situation where you have acknowledged your metaphoric hair being on fire, and so this message will not resonate with you. And you might be saying to yourself that I am being extreme and dramatic, but think about it. If you have experienced 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of crushing suffering in your life, that is the result of a relationship distress of some sort. And if relationships seem to continuously belittle your sense of worth, where you betray who you are as a human being, you deny yourself to the point that you're feeling like an empty shell of a person, not even in a relationship, but just going through the motions of what you believe a relationship should look like, you do need to start acknowledging the urgency, the hair on fire, of looking into your personal childhood history of abandonment and neglect and being rejected, and into the need of focused attention on this part of your psyche that's lodged into your felt sense body. It is lodged into your nervous system as a core wound that is constantly looping and constantly manifesting as distress and pain. I call the triggers of this looping hormone shots. They are felt sensations that appear in specific personal contexts of what we could call life stressors, that keep provoking the same external reality that seems to be happening to us, when in reality the seat of it lives in our psyche, more specifically in our psyche's wounds. We might be telling ourselves that all we want to experience is love and be loved, but we have to become clear that we have been trained into mirroring what is familiar. We do not create. We mimic what we know, what feels known and thus safe. And that might be being treated poorly, co-creating relationships that are lackluster, where we don't demand that much, where we learn to put ourselves on hold, we learn to be abandoned, we learn to be rejected, we participate in our own being ignored, we participate in our own abuse, we ignore self-care, we engage in self-neglect. If you have done this for years and years and years, at some point it is the equivalent of noticing your hair is on fire, and tending to it has to become a priority. So yes, there are life circumstances where it becomes obvious that all we can seek out is our healing, our self-care, our comfort and compassion, our ability to feel connected in this world, to find meaningful, authentic connection. Health is about seeking all of these as if our hair was on fire, because if we don't, we're going to sit there and burn in the flames of despair and emotional discomfort. Unfortunately, my overwhelming experience with people, but also my personal experience up to a point, is that many of us have built up a tolerance and a normalcy to sitting in the fire. A bit like the story of the frog that you put in a pot of water that gets slowly warmer and warmer until the frog will boil alive, even though it would be perfectly capable of jumping out of the boiling water at any moment. Healing work is first about perseverance. It could take the form of regular prayer, mantra, meditation. It could mean committing to formal therapeutic intervention or any type of continuous process where you first decide that you have had enough of your own suffering and start building the necessary muscles to pull yourself out of that metaphorical boiling pot. Building this muscle is, in fact, a way of rewiring your brain. This is done initially through grief work. This is about grief and grieving, and not only grieving what happened, but grieving what didn't happen in your life. Many of us say we are ready to pursue change, but we're not really doing anything about it, or we only go through the motions of it. And this is where we produce a lot of covert smoke and mirrors, confused intention, and we often use the word trying. I'm trying to change. I'm trying to pursue my healing work. I'm trying to participate in a path of self-directed healing. But even the word trying is a bit of a letting ourselves off the hook and a rationalization to convince ourselves to just burn a little longer as we sit in the lingering pain and marinate in the dysfunction of our life's relationships, in our attachment trauma and the manifested reality of our core wound. I am quite aware of my ramped up, strong, forceful presentation of this urgency to get your hair off the fire, and I do need to acknowledge that I am doing this purposefully because I have such a passion about it. But also I'm aware that I'm going to be simultaneously addressing a group of people that will greatly resonate with this, and then also some people are going to be turned off because it's a little forceful. If that's your case, then please pick and choose the content on this channel and morph it in such a way so that you can digest it, because what's important is that you get the message and not necessarily whether you agree or disagree, or if you like or dislike the actual point I am making. Inner work means you find some innate grounded sense of an observer self, your own inner therapist self, and you begin to make choices to define clearly what are you working on, what needs focus, and what are the very concrete steps, the next steps you need to do to allow yourself to get closer and closer to achieving relationship maturity. Some of us do not go through that thought process to even map out what we are working on. We stay stuck in confusion, which is, of course, a legitimate state of mind that happens, but please know that in my personal experience and the experiences of every single person around me, be them clients, colleagues, or friends, confusion oftentimes is a buzzword that reinforces non-commitment, and it can be a rationalization, a justification, a way of disempowering ourselves from actually having to show up in our own life, and it reinforces the inability of attending to our hair being on fire. The first thing that you would need is a real strong innate sense, some internal spark to get off the couch and at least take one step closer to where you think your particular pond might be. This is not a passive process. This is about you coming into a contemplative, grounded, silent place to create focus on what you need to do next. That is going to bring you one step closer to self-care, to strengthening your sense of worth, to defining how you can be in relationships from a mature adult place. How do you heal your family wounds, your legacy of attachment injuries? How do you grieve in a way that is life-giving as opposed to emotionally crushing, and you don't just spiral into hell around your own painful emotional experiences? These are concrete skills, and you need to step up to making a declaration and taking a stand in our own life. Can you get inspired to really clearly define what does self-directed healing mean to you? What particular areas do you want to focus on, and how are you going to get there? If you do not answer those questions, it will not work. It could be helpful for you to learn some tools along the way, and it might give you ways to brainstorm and a way to enter this new age grouping that's so in trend nowadays. But you are always going to come back to this invitation and sometimes constraint, that life asks you to enter this process of healing, of maturing, and of growing. You'll basically find yourself at the same place over and over again. Maybe with a different person, maybe in a different place, but the emotional urgency will be there, felt like reoccurring trauma and pain. There are two reasons why people join a self-healing path. The first reason is that people are sick and tired of repeating the same old patterns of relationships that are no longer working or have never worked. They have identified their own co-creation of dysfunctional relationships, empty relationships, painful relationships, tension-filled relationships, or relationships that are based on attachment distress. Their nervous system is just whacked out and on edge, and they are so stressed out all the time just by being in this relationship that they come to the realization that they really cannot continue. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired in these relationships that don't work. Something has got to change. So for this category of people, there is an awareness, an identification of the problem, and the clear, honest, authentic desire to change. Other people have been on this path alone for quite a while and are looking for structure and direction. They're sick of that continuous confusion around, what do I do now? I might be able to identify that I'm sick and tired. I might be able to identify what is not working. But they still need clear steps to move forward towards manifesting different types of relationships. Please watch part 2 of this video for more insights.